The story you are about to be told started one day not so long ago, as a gnome named Noah a gnome sat among some flowers gently sprinkled with sun rays and morning dew. That little gnome was so bored he wished for something more fun to do. Then, could you believe, suddenly his wish really came true. But sometimes a wish granted is not what you'd expect, because the gnome had not prepared a plan for what happened next. The wind blew and blew and blew, the color blue from the sky, as the wild wind tends to do, and the thunder clouds turned everything gray, which is their usual way. So that is how the gnome's adventure begun that day. The strong wind had blown and blown and blown, and actually was able to pick up the Noah a gnome. Then the wind had thrown the gnome into a spinning cyclone, sort of shaped like a scrumptious and cold ice cream cone. The roaming winds carried the gnome to unknown zones far away from his gnome home, and oh, so many miles from all that gnome did own. "Oh no! Oh no!" Noah a gnome moaned, until the wind released its hold on the gnome and let him go, dropping him harshly on stiff soil and solid stones. Noah a gnome lay prone and let out a groan, thinking that he had broken all of his bones. Then Noah a gnome stood up and brushed himself off, seeing that he wasn't hurt by that windy toss. He turned his head in every direction to give his surroundings an inspection. "This is awfully awful," he thought. As he searched around, he saw that he was lost. It was quite a tragedy, you see, because all he could seem to see was a sea of wildly sprouted weeds. Now Noah a gnome gazed around with worried eyes, but not a single landmark could he recognize. The flowers and mushrooms and grass that grew high were odd shapes and formed to many a strange size. To Noah a gnome's shock, it appeared that among the gloomy rocks he had landed next to a hole about rabbit-sized. Then abruptly, giving Noah a gnome a surprise, 2 furry and floppy ears did rise from that hole's insides. Attached to those ears was a bunny rabbit wearing a candy-striped bow tie. The bunny rabbit carried a crunchy carrot that it cherished. If you asked him, you would find the bunny's name was Leaping Larry, and he was always as friendly and fair as a fairy from one of your favorite bedtime stories. "Where am I? This place seems so scary," Noah a gnome cried. "Scary, yes. Yes, it is very. You are in the forest's dark side, where all kinds of monsters reside," Leaping Larry replied with a sigh. "Monsters of what type?" Noah a gnome said, shaking with fright. "The kind of evil creatures with hideous features that come out every night when the moon is bright to try to give you a beastly bite. You might even say that we've got goblin problems and don't exactly know how to solve them, but perhaps it is you that can help," said the bow-tie-wearing bunny rabbit before giving out a warning yelp. Then the bunny rabbit returned down into the ground, because that bunny rabbit and gnome had been found by the grossest and worst and most cursed goblin in town. Through dense fog, Noah a gnome saw the goblin had the face of a frog with a stout snout of a heinous hog. It was covered in multicolored spots that looked like rainbow chicken pox, and as far as fangs go, the goblin had lots. Interestingly enough, instead of hair, the goblin was born with a horn on his head, and his horned head was filled to the brim with menacing stuff. Sticking out of the goblin's back was the tail of a fox, and believe me, you're in luck, because I won't even mention the beastly goblin's stinky socks. "My name is Scary Gary. I'm the meanest thing about," snarled the goblin as he gave a shout. The monster looked very creepy and cruel, as his mouth dripped a pool of icky green drool. "Well, if you're looking for a duel, that's something you won't find, because I am a gnome that is always kind," replied Noah a gnome, trying to keep a clear mind. The goblin moved to attack, but Noah a gnome was too quick for that. When the goblin reached out his arm, he didn't cause the gnome any harm. The goblin only managed to steal the pointy hat that the gnome had worn. Scary Gary stopped his vile fight and began to smile. For a while Scary Gary looked like a happy child, which for the ghoulish goblin that was very strange. So Noah a gnome understood the goblin had undergone a change. "Well, toot toot, you think the hat you took like a crook would make for you a lovely look?" asked Noah a gnome to Scary Gary, who investigated his loot as if reading a page in an interesting book. It's the type of thing that makes my heart feel itty-bitty because I am so ugly and it is so pretty. Its color reminds me of the spring sky, and I have a face that makes people want to cry," said the goblin, who started sobbing. It appeared Scary Gary was finished with his wrestling and robbing. "If you promise to stop haunting this side of the woods and promise to try to be happy and good, you can have my cap for free," said Noah a Gnome with glee, because Noah a Gnome knew that sharing, caring, and giving is the best way to go about living. "Really? For me? But that is so friendly. Someone as kind as you must be hard to find," said the goblin, who put on the hat and looked very fine. "Creatures and animals give all the time. You just couldn't see it because you were blind with crime," said Noah a Gnome, whose smile shined. Then a dinner bell rang like a chime. The bunny rabbit rose from his hole with a whole lot of hot and cold food that he could barely hold. "Well, if the panic is over at last, let's spread out this blanket to have a picnic among the clovers and grass," said Leaping Larry as he laughed. So it turned out in the end, it was fate that those three should be friends. They picnicked all morning, noon, and evening. Then as it got late, they ate all the food on their plates with a joyous feeling. And forever after that, they were all the best of mates. The end.